Good to see everybody, and we're delighted to welcome to our microphones this morning from Pekin and Tazewell County, a gentleman that I've just recently gotten acquainted with, although well known on the other side of the river, John Ackerman. Good morning, John. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, guys. How is everybody?
Nice to see you in person. I've read about him, and it's great to see you in person.
Was it at the post office, one of the flyers on the wall?
I think it might have been in the news, but look at this nice-looking
This is a better flyer
guy.
than at the post office, Roger, right now, I can tell
I mean, who knew?
Yeah, who knew, John Ackerman?
He's just a pup.
Well, let me tell you something, boys and girls. I've lived on this earth long enough in Peoria, and I worked at WSIV in Pekin many moons ago when it was in the basement of the arcade building. So I got a little acquainted with Pekin folks, and know the Ackerman name on that side of the river is one of the icon names of Tazewell County, isn't it, John?
Family's been there for a long time. Ancestor moved there in 1836, and ever since then have been farming.
You don't look a day over 32.
Are you related to the Owen Ackerman family?
Yes. Owen Ackerman of Peoria, yes.
Right.
He is a second or third cousin.
Because I wonder if it's with that name Ackerman, there probably is some sort of similarity. And
it's not exactly a name of Smith or Jones.
Go. No. That's what I was thinking.
They had a great article in the paper, a month ago, about him and swimming.
Absolutely
I
great
used to
swimmer.
swim with him at the Y, and he's like Ichabod Crane, that tall guy with those arms. He's swimming in the backstroke. Boy,
he went to Peoria High, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
and
I think he set some records.
I swam with him when I was a little boy, and he was a big kid.
Yes.
He was one of those kids I looked
tall
up to.
and lanky, and his arm span is just
What was his
He's got a Michael Phelps wingspan.
wingspan. Yes.
Is that important in swimming?
Guess
Are
you
you
got the
saying
length.
people with short, stubby arms like Royce? Well, Royce couldn't swim, and he did not ever
So
learn
you have an
to
advantage,
swim.
wouldn't you? You got the long wingspan.
And a little buoyancy, yes.
Yeah.
No,
That's
I'm
right.
talking about
Royce
Royce.
had. I said, Royce, you don't need to swim. Lay on your back, and you got that belly that would just allow you, it's like a buoy in the Illinois River. Well, we're getting away from John here with our stories about Royce, which are legendary. Tell us a little bit about you and your particular family. Where you went to school and
I was born and raised in Washington. That's where I live. Grandparents have a farm in Deer Creek, though. Spent a lot of time out there.
I had you living in Pekin. I don't know why, but you actually live in Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got lots of family throughout Morton and throughout the Tazewell County area. Just my wife and I have been married for 9 years. Our 9-year anniversary was last Wednesday.
Well, happy anniversary.
Flowers.
Way to go.
Yeah.
That's nice of you, John.
Yeah, that's right. You got her flowers, not Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Not Dunkin' Donuts, just flowers.
Thanks for the
yes.
Dunkin' Donuts for your one-day anniversary with us.
And then got 3 kids. I've got a 6, a 7-year-old, and then a 6-month-old. So,
What's your education back? Well, what are their names? Let's give the kids.
The oldest child is named after my first ancestor to come after. So he's Christian John Ackerman. And then the second is named after my wife. She's actually first generation. Her parents immigrated here from Greece. So she's first generation.
Her maiden name is?
Maria Randitza. She actually is a Woodford product.
Okay.
Woodruff, product. So
Really?
Yes, yeah. Grew up in the East Bluff area there of Peoria. And,
She did.
Yep.
Well, she has to be a winner.
Well, our second child is named after her father, who was their first person to immigrate to the United States. So it's Demetrius George Ackerman.
Beautiful names, by the
No
way.
kidding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
2
And
for
then
2 right now.
Our daughter was born 6 months ago, and we named her Anastasia Maria Ackerman. Anastasia is just the Greek way of saying Anastasia.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's
Very
great.
nice.
I sense that these names probably came from your wife.
No, Christian
No,
actually
really?
was my
Okay.
idea. Old family
Well,
tradition.
why do you give credit where credit is due here?
Old family tradition that there's that Christian John has been passed down ever since that first ancestor. So there's always been a Christian John somewhere in the Ackerman clan. And then so we decided to continue that tradition. And then when we did that, it just became natural then for our second child. And then the third was my wife. We were discussing it, and I was I wanted an A, so I was looking at, Anastasia was always one that I thought was neat.
Beautiful name.
Well, let's throw the Greek version, then Anastasia, and I'm like,
Anastasia. Well, interesting name, to say the least. I wish we were on camera. We used to be on camera, and then Royce pointed out that we have the face for radio, so we didn't use the camera anymore. But you're dressed like $1 million. I have not seen someone wear, and that's classy, I compliment you, wear a vest, but you have a vest. I mean,
And I'm a fan of the vest.
I am too.
I'm a
I've
real
got
fan
a,
of the vest.
I got a, I can't get in the vest anymore, but I've got a vest hanging in the closet. I always took great pride in. You don't see many people wearing vests today, and to me, I think it's a classy touch.
Oh, it's total classic.
Well, because of my line of work, I have to wear a suit a lot of times. So in a day and age where many of my friends barely have one suit, I've got a closet with 12 of them, and I like the throwback. So I've got that. I like the double-breasted. I like the older-fashioned suits. I think
What kind of
they're
work
got a
do you do that you're not a pallbearer, are you?
My company, I started it 2 years ago, works with different businesses. My main client is the Greek Orthodox Church to get their items in the newspaper. Our church's office is out of Chicago, and they oversee all the Greek churches in a 6-state radius. It's set up kind of like the Catholic Church. So I work out of Chicago a lot of times, and we go to different church events. That's why I always, like I said, I like to have a suit on hand so I can fit the part. So coordinating with different media outlets to just, hey, this event's taking place. Did you know it? You know, with the climate nowadays with journalism, staff rates being cut the way they are, people feeding information is the most important way for them to get the information that they want to put out. So you need somebody.
You're
to
in the
roll up
marketing business.
Marketing, public
Yeah,
relations,
public
that's what I was
relations,
thinking,
yeah.
sure.
And you know a little bit about that after being
We
at
love
the
marketing and
Children
public
and
relations. We love
Family
it.
Services. That's where I met Suzette Boulay a number of years ago. Well, how'd you get up into, you are a candidate for Tazewell County Clerk. How'd you and when did you develop an interest in politics?
You know, it actually goes back to Cub Scouts. My parents had me in the Boy Scout program. I went through Cub Scouts, through Boy Scouts then, and I consider it a jewel. You were talking about Pekin, had the honor of sitting at a banquet with Scott Altman at his table. And
Who is from Pekin?
Yes, an astronaut, Scott Altman, looked over at me and he goes, heard that you're an Eagle Scout. And I said, yes, I am. And he goes, you want to know the biggest regret? One of the biggest regrets in my life? I said, what's that? He goes, I stopped at life. I didn't make Eagle. And I'm like, I was told that all the astronauts were Eagle Scouts. And he goes, they were up to me.
They were up
He
to
broke.
me.
He
Look,
broke
son,
the
I'm telling
chain.
you.
Isn't that
I
interesting
think the
that
skills and the
yeah.
lessons, the life lessons that they teach people are important, especially in this day and age where the gray zone, I guess you could say, has become larger. It's important for people to have a strong moral compass of what is right, what is wrong, what is the way of thinking about what actions we take and how they impact the lives of others. And I think that that's a magnificent thing that the Boy Scout program installs. In the Cub Scout program, one of the things they did was handed out a ballot that year for all of us to see, and we did a mock election. We went through and we voted, and the Cub Scout leader was flipping the pages. She said, for state representative, John C. Ackerman. You're not running for it. Who's this? You know this person? And I said, I don't know who that man is. John C. Ackerman. That's me. That's my name. How could that be? Come find out it was J. Ackerman. And come to find out, I grew up swimming on his leg. Dad would take us over there to go fishing. I knew Jay real well, but I never knew who he was or that he was in politics. So Jay
That was your
kind
introduction to public service?
He was very
or
kind enough to
public?
take me down to the state capitol to show me around and
Jay
all that.
did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he kept in contact, and it just built an interest. If I think it's one of those things, they're distant individuals until you finally meet one and you realize, if he could do it, maybe I could do it as well, and set your sights on something like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because my dad was on the city council when he would, on occasion, take me down to City Hall, and I would sit there in awe. And then he got on the county board as township supervisor when he was elected as the title used to be overseer of the poor, now it's general assistant. And through the mail would come the minutes of meetings. And as a kid, I would sit there and read and love to see my dad's name. Sure. Zach Monroe, Mr. Monroe made a motion, et cetera, and so forth. And that fueled my interest in politics, and later on ran for county board. And so it is interesting that through scouts that you learned about government service and
Well, and another
public
aspect
office.
in there scout-wise, too, when my dad took over as our Boy Scout leader. When I moved to Boy Scouts, they needed a leader, so my dad stepped forward and volunteered. And one of the things was you had to go down to a city council meeting and sit in. And we're in Washington, but he goes, I know somebody in East Peoria. Let's go down there and talk with them. It's Terry Tucker. Terry Tucker owned the steakhouse in Washington. I just knew him from going and eating at the thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing down here? He brought us into the city council meeting, sat us down, told us what his to be a city commissioner there in East Peoria and everything, and we'd sit in the meetings and watch him vote. And years later, then when I got on the city council, I was like, this is where I used to look up to, because it was one of those things. You'd sit there from this other side, and he was a giant, like you said. You read about him. Terry Tucker did this in the newspaper or that. And, I know that man, blah, blah, blah. Then to be on the other side of it, to be somebody actually sitting there watching the crowd then was a different thing. So.
7:33, if you're just joining us, we're talking to John Ackerman, who is a Washington resident and is seeking to become the Tazewell County Clerk. When did you make that decision? I don't know why. I'm under the impression. Have you been on the Tazewell County Board?
I was on the city council first.
Okay.
I got into that right out of high school and was on the city council for 3.5 years in Washington.
In Washington, okay.
And then ran for county board, and I served on the county board for 9 years.
That's why I thought you had been on the
And then I
county board.
stepped down 4 years ago to run for county clerk against the incumbent. And, I went in her office. I knew her real well and said, it's nothing personal. I have a different vision for this office. And she'd been in there for 25 years. So it was an uphill fight. And she even told me, I'm going to retire in 4 years. Do you just want to wait? And
That was being real.
well,
Right.
it was a nice conversation.
Yeah.
She's a classy lady. She's a wonderful lady. But it was, again, just a different vision I had for that office. So I said, appreciate that, but I am going to run for it. Lost by 3% of the vote, which any political science professor will tell you that the incumbent gets 5% in an election. So, I thought it was pretty close and a decent run. And had an opportunity to talk to a lot of people about the vision I had. Mm-hmm. So 4 years have come up. I've been out running my business, like I mentioned to you, and I think it's time now to put that vision back into the front of the people again. And
She's retiring, isn't she?
She's retired,
and
so
that is
The 4 years are
Christy
up, huh?
Webb, yeah.
Christy Webb.
Yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm.
So this is an open seat. As such, a couple other individuals have thrown their names in as well. But I think what sets me apart is that strategic plan that I've already developed for how to move the office forward. It's not just seeking an office because it's open, because it's vacant, but rather because there's a need for improvement in that office. There's a need to move it forward.
Tell everybody what the county clerk does. Every county has a clerk or a county clerk, and certainly Tazewell does. And Peoria County, obviously, with Steve Sonemaker as the clerk. What are some of the duties, responsibilities of the county clerk?
Well, the county clerk, of course, everybody knows, handles the elections, is in charge of maintaining the integrity of the election process. But more importantly, the rest of its job is really taking the actions of county government and making it accessible to the citizens. As such, I'm a big advocate for transparency, for making information more readily available. And that plays right into the position of county clerk, which is one of the reasons 4 years ago I ran for this, is making the actions of the board and the decisions that are made there more accessible and more visible for the voters to be able to see and understand.
Does that mean perhaps that on the website that you explain the minutes or you explain what has been achieved or accomplished? I mean, how,
Exactly.
Is that
One of the big things I put forward, I've been pressing that I'm going to grow, strengthen, and improve. The first one, grow, is grow county government transparency. Mm-hmm. If you take a look at our comparable counties, Champaign, McLean County, Sangamon, it's easy to find out immediately how your board members voted instantly that evening. On ours, it takes a while, several months, before the minutes are produced and you're able to scan through all of the minutes. And it's a thick booklet to read through the entire thing and try to cipher out how each one of your board members, and if you really wanted a comprehensive look on how a board member's done in his 4-year term, you have to have a research team to sit down and scan through all those documents.
all those Excel sheets?
Now, my friend Kathy Michael in McLean County, the fellow Republican county clerk down in Champaign, rather than take the role of the county board, marking each vote with pen and paper like we do in Tazewell County, they mark them into a spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. The spreadsheet's instantaneously loaded right onto the website, and you can see, not detailed, but you can see on this item, on this item they're voting on, so-and-so voted yes or voted no. And you're able to see it that very evening, instantaneously, so that there is no delay where you've lost interest in the item and you no longer want to look for it. Here's the information you want. It's easy and it's available for you. And just that implementation of that one.
Very contemporary.
So you could be looking at the website. Let's say you're over there and you have an interest in an item, and as soon as it's voted on,
could have it as soon as, or could have it by the end of the meeting. It all depends on the different angles that you take on how you upload it. You know what I mean? And the timing. Sure. Right here's a fix that The equipment's already in the office. They've got laptops. They've got iPads. They have them with them at that meeting.
Yes.
So it's not going to cost any equipment. The staff's already doing the job. They're just doing it with pen and paper. It's just a more efficient,
It's so accessible.
way of getting the information.
Instead of
Very.
waiting for months to dig out
And
what
again,
you need to dig
it's
out.
already in action in our comparable county. So I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm not a rocket scientist coming up with some new plan. This is stuff that's already practical, already in use in other counties our size. It's just something we hadn't had anybody run against Miss Webb for ages. I don't think she'd ever had an opponent since her original election. And I think that that's bad for the system, because I think if you're not challenged to do better, you get complacent and this is the way I've always done it. This is the way I'm going to continue to always do it. You have to have that push. In the private sector, if a business doesn't grow, strengthen, and improve, it's going to go under. It's just the way it is. You can't keep selling the same product the same way for 25 years.
And it sounds like you're utilizing technology, and you're going to use technology today, and there's going to be a better way tomorrow. So you want to stay up with it.
Yeah, and anybody who knows me and reviewed my records knows I don't let the grass grow. I don't just, hey, I'm here, I'm fine, and just sit back and relax. I had friends after my loss go, there's an open seat in 2 years. You can run for the county board. Heck, with your election results, yeah, but I don't have a reason. I want to run for county clerk, and I'm not the type that likes to bounce around different spots. If there's something I say I want to do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to provide the product I've promised. I've talked about transparency. I've done everything as a county board member I can to do it. It's time to produce something else, and the county clerk's office is where that something else is at.
Do you think people understand the county clerk? Do you think that they get that immersed, you might say, into who would be the best to look after records, birth records, marriage records, things of that nature? Or is it the kind of race that they feel they're going to vote for a name that they are most familiar with? Or is it a combination?
A combination. I think if left to it, and it's not as sexy as a sheriff's race. You know what I mean? A sheriff, everybody's going to want to vote in that. But it is an office that I think when you talk to people, and that's the key, is getting out and talking to people. When you talk to them and engage them on what the office is doing, it is one that they listen to, because who doesn't want the voting system to be secure? And, that's another thing I wanted to... One of the other newspapers asked me, what would you do differently? Give us another example. And I said, one of the things I do is our records in Tazewell County, our voting system is secure. This whole gamut about the Russians hacking the elections would be impossible to do it in Tazewell County because of the voting eye, the system that we have. We don't have the computer hookup like you guys do in Peoria County, which the Russians couldn't have hacked that either because it was a closed network, not open network. But I would have been out in front of that as county clerk. As soon as those rumors started, you're talking about, and granted it was national media talking about the national voting system, but our voters in Tazewell County don't care about that. The county clerk is the one that is in charge of the voting system in Tazewell County. The county clerk is the one whose integrity of, if that system is solidified where something can't happen, if it's safe, that rests on that person's shoulders. As county clerk, I would have been out in front saying, our system is secured. That never took place in Tazewell County. That can't take place. This is why. These are the steps we've taken. I would have been proactive on the front end of the story rather than waiting. She did have an article in the paper months after the story broke, and people had been gossiping about it, that never could have happened here. We're secure. I just would have taken a more proactive approach.
Did you
to
say
it.
you have paper ballots?
Yeah, we've got paper. We do the digital eye where you color in the circle and it scans it in. And it's a nice system. It's 100% secure. There's no way that you can hack that. No Russians coming over here and hacking ours through a computer system.
We're not sure they know how to fill in the blank for one thing.
No, they put a check mark.
Yeah, pardon the expression. That's interesting because I was on the county board when we went to the electronic system, which, by the way, costs thousands of dollars. And I know it's faster and it's quicker, but it's also more expensive. And to this day, I still wonder whether or not this was the right direction to go. Is it important to get the results out quick, or is it important to be cost effective? And I'm a student of the old paper ballot. We do that in Morton. We scratch in with the black pen, et cetera. And there are probably some people who, particularly elected officials, are listening, say, oh, come on, Roger, you're in the dark ages. But I don't think you want to refer to the people in Washington or Tazewell County of being in the dark ages.
Not at all. But I do think that there is a there is a good middle ground that can be found. You absolutely want to make sure that the results are being taken accurately. But I do think timeliness is important as well. We have had a bad history in Tazewell County of our elections because of flaws with the system, with the equipment
Well, what
not
can
working.
be the? You mean? Well, how can there be flaws in the system if you have paper ballots?
Machine not working or the scanner that counts the results not working accurately.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
there's
right.
different things
Yeah.
that we can do to make sure that we get it done in a much more efficient pace and get the results out so that people aren't up until 2 in the morning waiting for election results for a little county. When Peoria County closes way ahead of Tazewell County, it is a bit of an embarrassment.
Well, but
the
do the people in
security of the
Tazewell
system
County
is important.
Yeah. I have to tell you, going back to the paper ballots, when I first ran for county board, and I was on the county board for 22 years, I went to bed. I called the, I think it was WEEK radio, might have been WAAP, and I knew the newscaster. I said, hey, can you give me the results of the county board, District 8? And he said, you lost, Roger, and hung up. And I was devastated, not only by losing, but the way I was just dismissed, like, you're no longer important, Roger.
You're not big news.
Yeah.
Hang up.
You're a loser, Roger. And any rate, I went to bed feeling sorry for myself, as most candidates do. I'm sure Hillary Clinton went to bed feeling sorry for herself, and for good reason. But because, for one, she was expecting to win. I was just hoping to win, for that matter. However, in the morning, I was laying in bed, and my wife was already up making breakfast in the kitchen. And she came down. She had the radio up real loud as they were giving the results, and she came running down the hallway. Roger, you won.
Obviously, you got some aired information there, right?
Well, it was early in
Too
the
early.
night, and they had paper ballots at that time.
Well,
And it
happy ending.
didn't
No
give.
kidding.
He wasn't allowing enough time for me to get the votes in that I had filled in prior to the election. I think I filled in about 125 votes for myself. No, I'm just kidding. But that was how the system worked, and it was slow, but it worked out in my favor, as it turned out.
My first election to the city council, like I told you, I won it right out of high school. And my campaign manager was the way Washington has it set up is they divided the city into wards. So I was running for the 4th ward, which had 4 precincts.
And that's the way
And,
Peoria was at one time, 10 wards.
And there's 2 aldermen to each one of those districts. So the gentleman that was already on there as an alderman was a friend of mine. He was helping me with my campaign. This is my first campaign for anything. And his name was Joe Greiser. And there was a banker in town, Malin Blumenschein, used to own the Sun Bank, later was with Morton Community Bank. He was helping my campaign, financing it and everything. And Bill Mayer was another one. And he was the old pharmacist in Sunnyland, Bill Mayer. And he was supporting my campaign. So I had those 3 with me. And election night comes around, and the results are coming in. And the first precinct to be counted, I've lost it, not by a huge margin. I mean, it's only 4 precincts, but still, it was upside down. The second one, it suddenly starts to catch up and get closer, and the third one gets reported, and again, I'm back a ways. My campaign manager, Mr. Greiser, calls me up and he goes, "John, 3 out of 4. You gave it a good run. It's not a humiliating defeat. You did your best. Come back.
You have a good showing.
Yeah, come back in a couple of years." The next one's Malin Blumenschein giving me a call. "John, I've seen the results, and I'm disappointed, but you did everything right. You did everything you could." And Bill Mayer's the third one. "John, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah." Hang up. And, I'm going to stubborn. I'm going to wait for that 4th one. I just want to see what that 4th one comes in. How bad was I defeated? Ends up the 4th one was my home precinct. The first one reported was his home precinct, and then one where I won, but didn't catch up the margin. Then he won the second one, which wasn't his home, but another one. The 4th one was my home precinct, and I won it, and it was enough to push me over the top. I won the election.
That's
All
our
three
boy.
called me up and
So did you call all and said, by the way, I've
They
won?
all 3 called me back going, "I apologize, blah,
Hey,
blah, blah."
come back, kid.
Malin's call, though, was the best, Malin Blumenschein. So he gives me a call, and he goes, "John, congratulations, but I've got one question for you." And I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I forgot about your age. Can I even buy you a beer yet?" And I said, "You got to wait a year before you can buy me a beer, Malin."
Well, root
I owe
beer.
you a beer.
Well, it could be a root
When
beer
you grow
for them.
up.
Well,
That's
it's
cute.
an old saying, it's never over until the fat lady
No.
sings. and she sang, and you won. Well, how old were you when you?
I was 20 years old when I
20
won. I
years
started
old,
running
yeah.
when I was 19, 20, and then when I took office.
I'll be doggone.
Well, you've got a proclivity, I would say. You've got an inclination for this kind of work.
Well, John Ackerman, thanks for coming in. Good luck to you. When is the primary, and do you have opposition in the primary?
I do. March 20th is the primary. There is it's a three-way race right now.
Okay,
and
in
of
the
course we won't know
Republican
until everybody
primary.
turns- Yeah. And the other two, they're fantastic people. I've helped both of them out in the past. When it's an open seat, everybody wants to get involved. Like I said, I think the difference. I've been asked, so you lost 4 years ago. Why you're running again? You really think you've got it this time? And I remind everybody, in 1976, a guy from California threw his name out against an incumbent and he lost. But he had a vision for how that office should be run. And he continued to press it for the next 4 years. And in 1980, Ronald Reagan came back, and Ronald Reagan had a contested primary with a lot of great people that he had supported in the past running against him. But still, it's that vision, that plan for how we can do better.